Just then, I saw Helena passing by. A fleeting thought crossed my mind about how my life would be pushed from here. Everything was indeed unpredictable. A moment later, everyone announced, "Miss, everyone is waiting." When did they arrive? I asked, as Anakin had already closed the door. He said, "I'll wait here until the banquet is over, miss." With the door closed, I began to feel anxious and sweat. Someone stepped closer. "Miss, we don't have much time. You still need to put on your coat for today." "I don't want to wear that coat." "Even if you don't like it, you can't refuse." After a while, I looked in the mirror and felt unusually beautiful. I thought, it's worth it, even though the Crown Prince's heart is certainly reserved for someone else. I said, "If we're ready, let's go." "But the Crown Prince hasn't arrived yet," one of the attendants questioned. "He won't come because he's definitely protecting Helena," I replied. At that moment, when the door opened, I saw the expressions of the attendants. They seemed to know something. I guess I have to go to the banquet hall to see who had a hand in this. Looking around, whispers began to arise. Why is Miss Michian walking in alone? Where is the Crown Prince? Is she really going to enter without her fiancé by her side? As she stepped into the middle of the hall, she scanned the room in search of someone and then approached, saying, "Lord Quirg, could you hold my hand?" He thought to himself, is she even in her right mind? Although this was a coming-of-age ceremony, it was essentially the engagement ceremony of the Crown Prince and heiress. Nevertheless, no knight would dare refuse the request of a young lady on her coming-of-age day. "Let's go," Quirg said. At that moment, the hall grew noisier and more lively, with whispers growing louder as they saw her enter with someone else instead of the Crown Prince. Quirg felt anxious. "What are we going to do?" "What about the prince?" She replied. "Can't you see? You brought a dance partner, right? Did they abandon you? Don't you think that's heartless? How could this happen? It's the young lady's coming-of-age ceremony, how could it be like this?" Someone whispered. "They say love is blind, but how could she not know that Helena and the prince were together?" At that moment, her father approached from behind. "My daughter, what is happening?" Shortly after, the emperor and empress entered as well. "Heiress, you look beautiful. So beautiful that you dazzle my eyes." "Good evening, your majesty and empress." He asked, "But why is it so empty beside me? Where is Alex?" In response to the emperor's question, she merely smiled. Prince Alex was leading another girl into the banquet celebrating his fiancée's coming of age. The girl was wearing a gown identical to that of the prince's fiancée. It was indeed hard to compete with the main character. Eris was beautiful, but how could she compare to Helena? Eventually, she noticed they were wearing the same dress. At that moment, she stopped. "Can I change into another dress? Would you allow me to do that?" "Helena, you should go change into another dress." Hearing Eris's words, Helena yanked her hand away from the prince's and turned to run. At that moment, he blamed Eris. The emperor and empress didn't understand why this was happening. She stepped forward and said, "I know your highness has much to say, but I want to present something to you first. Would you allow me?" She glanced at the empress. She thought that the gown Helena was wearing must be her backup dress, in case the main one was damaged. It was impossible for the prince to take it from the lady. Therefore, there must clearly have been assistance from the empress. Through the way Helena was treated with such favoritism, Eris became the one who was hated. The two of them went outside to talk. "Your highness, you hate me, don't you? You hate me. That's right, isn't it? After all, you hope for me to suffer in pain and loneliness, don't you? When you entered the banquet, the first thing you noticed wasn't the emperor, but my expression. You want to admire my wounded face, don't you? I once wished that I could just die. So please, don't intentionally hurt me anymore. It's truly ridiculous." With that, she turned to walk away. As she opened the door, she saw Jason standing there. She thought this person would chase after Helena. "Lord Quirg, why did you leave Miss Helena alone? I heard that you were robbed of the chance to go ahead by the prince, but since you didn't invite her, you have to take responsibility for it, right?" Then she walked past Quirg and went inside. Originally, Eris was supposed to arrive late to the banquet, but because she came early, everything changed. The idea that she would become the tormented female lead in love or the tears she would shed for those waiting to see her humiliation would not happen. If Eris had an epilogue in this novel, it would be her story. Even if she used all her feelings to envy Helena or love the prince, she still wanted to understand her as a person. Yet even now, having entered her body, she still knew nothing about her. It seemed that anyone in her world would not know her either. "Oh, my beloved daughter-in-law has arrived. Did you have a smooth conversation?" the emperor asked. "Yes, your majesty," she replied, secretly thinking that they must have feared she would request an annulment. From Eris's bright expression, it seemed that the misunderstanding had been resolved. The Marquis would not do anything to harm Eris's reputation. In the royal family, polygamy was officially permitted, so today's incident could not overshadow the multitude of other scandals. Even if Eris were truly infertile, Helena would still be accepted into the harem. Only the prince could directly request an annulment. If the children were about to cause trouble, they should resolve it properly and not forget to prepare an escape route as well. At that moment, the emperor said to her, "My child, do you remember what I told you before?" "Yes, it was about not being jealous, right?" she replied. "That's right. You are correct. You have raised a good, virtuous daughter." "You flatter me, your majesty," she responded politely. Poor Eris, this world truly did not show her any concern. In a place that felt no different from an engagement ceremony, even if an incident occurred, they wouldn't force her to annul the engagement. Why was that? Were they waiting for things to become more serious before pushing her into a difficult position? But how would everything unfold later? Originally, Eris was supposed to replace Helena and leave, but as things changed, she found herself even more confused. At that moment, she heard crying. Was it Helena? Was she here? Hearing footsteps, Helena turned around, her eyes full of tears. "I'm sorry. I really didn't know about this dress. How did this happen? I was wrong," Helena said through her tears. "I'm really sorry, please forgive me. I know I shouldn't cry, but I'm sorry. I'll stop crying right away." She looked at Helena and thought, she is the most vulnerable, so apologizing has become her instinct. Yet I misunderstood and thought she would live happily. Although she had no visible wounds, it didn't mean her heart wasn't suffering. "That's okay, go ahead and cry, it's fine. If you want to cry, just cry," she comforted her. Was it okay for me to say that? Afterward, she walked away, found a chair, and sat down. "Anakin, bring some wine over here." He quickly brought the wine. She said, "The rice cake has been prepared, are you going to eat it?" "No, I brought it because it seemed like you hadn't eaten anything. I'll get some more for you." "That's enough." "But why didn't you bring your own glass of wine?" "I can't drink while I'm working," he replied. "Even if I allow you to?" "If it's a command, I will drink. But I think it's not important." She lifted his chin playfully, teasing, "What's important and what's not? Try to guess. After hearing you, I'll remember it for life." She laughed, thinking that this stiff guy was like someone being teased in a documentary. "I was just joking. If you don't want to, you don't need to emphasize it so much." "Thank you, miss, for understanding. Why don't you tell me about yourself?" "About me?" "Yes, anything will do. I'm really curious about you." A multitude of thoughts raced through her mind. How had he survived until now? Why had he become a knight? Did he have any other dreams, and if so, what were they? Since we were both in the same boat, she wanted to know more about the perfect side stories in this world that hadn't been recorded in the novel. Anakin paused thoughtfully and said, "I was an orphan. My parents abandoned me because they wanted to, or due to unavoidable circumstances. But that doesn't matter, since I have no memories of them, so there's no longing." "So who did you meet afterward?" "It was the boy that you met, Mississippi. Come to think of it, I haven't heard that boy's name." "What is it?" "He said he hated his name. I told him I would give him a new one. Next time I see him, I'll try to ask." "You're really strange. Don't you have any other dreams?" "I have little education, so I can't take on jobs that require brains. It took me a long time to even master reading and writing. I once planned to become a mercenary, but I'm not sure now, maybe I'm not good at that aspect." She smiled. Actually, with your personality, it must be hard for you to make friends in society. If it weren't for you, miss, I might have become a mercenary by now. It seems that being a wandering knight suits you quite well. Yes, wandering alone on horseback. If I come across someone in need, I help them and receive a reward. That reward could be food, a place to rest, sometimes money, or even rare gold. The wandering knight walks his own path. Looking up at the sky, she said, the weather is beautiful today. Do you know any constellations? The dragon constellation and the gods watch constellation, he replied. Is that all? That one is the constellation of the sorcerer, she laughed, then looked up at Anakin. If I die and return to my world, I wonder what punishment you would face? Death? What about Helena? And my maidens? How many innocent people would have to be sacrificed to leave this place? This is serious, she thought. I no longer feel like you are just a character in the story. Maybe it would be better if this world were destroyed by those stars, all falling down. After that day, she used the event of her coming-of-age ceremony as an excuse for this trip. She was the poor girl, hurt by the impulsive actions of her fiancé. Rander, since it lacked the Marquis's villa, she could avoid the pursuit of Marquis Michian. Before leaving, Emma said, Miss, have a great trip. Of course, I'll be back, Emma. Looking at Emma, she thought, this girl is afraid I won't return. But I definitely will come back. You must come back, for sure, Emma emphasized. She thought, no, the girl only cares for Eris, not me. Her first journey attracted much attention. Did you do what I instructed? Yes, I bought all the tickets for the stations where the train will stop, Anakin replied. Very good. Even if there are pursuers, they won't be able to recognize us immediately. They both boarded the train, and she was well prepared with a first-class seat and a resting room. She thought, they only appreciate that difficult lady, the Marquis Michian, not me. Just get me to where I need to go safely, and after this, everyone will use the train instead of horse-drawn carriages. Of course, I plan to disappear halfway, but I have a scheme to fool all three parties, the royal family, the Marquis, and... Thinking about this, she smiled. While they were having their meal, she asked, what's wrong? Not to your taste? Anakin replied, Miss, you don't need to order a meal for me. What are you talking about? Are you saying you want me to starve my knight protector? No, I mean I can just eat what's left of your meal. I've gotten used to going without food for a few days. She slammed her hand on the table, angry. I'm not the kind of person who lets her knight protector eat leftovers. Stop arguing and eat. Yes, thank you. Watching him eat, she thought, why is he so thin? He has nothing but bones, no vitality at all. Although I usually prefer tall and slender guys, he's not my boyfriend, he's my knight protector. It's only right that I fatten him up. With that thought, she ordered 2 more servings of ice cream. After 3 days of lounging on the train, today was the day she would escape. She began her preparations for a disguise and, of course, didn't forget to add a beauty mark to her face. After all that, she looked quite presentable. She asked Anakin, when you lived in the underworld, you were the most observant, right? Does my disguise look convincing? He said, I'm not very knowledgeable, so I don't really understand your intention. Do I really need to go this far? Anakin asked. Do you really need to go this far, miss? Anakin asked. I have to do this to outsmart them. No one would ever imagine Lady Michian behaving like someone from the underworld. She continued, no matter how I speak or dress, I'm still Heiress Michian, your master. That doesn't change. I'll trick them, make them misunderstand, and then leave them behind. Anakin pondered, people only want to see, hear, and believe what they want. Who's standing right in front of you? Someone who has given me a title, the master of my sword and my life, Heiress Michian. Well done. Now get up. The prey has fallen into the trap, it's probably waiting for me. On this trip, she planned to deceive 3 parties, the Marquis, the royal family, and finally, the Grand Minister Hybris. If she waited until reaching Rander, the overseers the Marquis had sent would cling to her tightly. So before arriving in Rander, she would disguise herself as a girl, follow Hybris, and then disembark the train with him. At that moment, Anakin was moving on the roof of the train to avoid detection. She thought Anakin must be feeling quite anxious. He's the Marquis's trusted aide. Does he recognize me? No, he must have moments of uncertainty too. But just then, he stood up and began to follow her. She reminded herself, I must stay calm. Then she murmured, Anakin, hurry to the second-class compartment. She worried that Anakin might hear her voice, but she couldn't detect any sound. Is there a way for me to know? The distance between them was closing, and she couldn't afford to be caught right now. Immediately, she began to speed up her escape. Just then, Anakin appeared. Seeing her run, he asked, Is someone tailing you? Let me handle it. Don't make a fuss, she pulled him back and said, Anakin, kiss me right now. It doesn't have to be real, just pretend, but do it quickly. As she spoke, she rose on her toes and pressed her face against his. Don't worry, we're just pretending. Feeling Anakin's quickened breath, she thought maybe he was panting because he had just run to her. Just then, the man appeared and saw the two of them. He muttered, Could I be mistaken? Then he left. Did you hear that? She asked. Anakin replied, Yes, I heard. He has already left. She breathed a sigh of relief for escaping a difficult situation. I'm sorry for suddenly asking you to kiss me. Did you feel uncomfortable? Not at all, my lady. In the future, if you don't like any of my orders, you can refuse. If I make you unhappy, don't forgive me. She knew that Anakin would never refuse her, but she still hoped he wouldn't have to struggle to understand her. At that moment, she stood in front of Hybrus's door. Taking a deep breath, she opened the door and stepped inside. Hybrus stared at her wide-eyed. What in the world is with your outfit? Are you more concerned about my outfit than the reason I'm here? She smiled lightly and sat down. Anyway, I'm about to get off the train. My feet hurt a bit, so I hope you don't mind if I sit for a moment. Are you saying you have to get off the train? Hybrus asked. I'm here to meet you, the deity, she replied. I ask that you take me along. Remembering earlier, she had asked Anakin to relay a message to Hybrus. The esteemed Mayus is in critical condition. Please return soon to check on him. Hybrus asked, Aren't you going to Randa anymore, Lady Michian? This is also a way to network, so I've requested that you take me along, she said. You dressed up for this? Hybrus asked, surprised. That's right. To shake off my pursuers and end this charade, I need your help, she answered calmly. What do you mean by that? Hybrus asked, confused. At that moment, the announcement sounded that the train was about to stop. She stood up and said, For my sake, please become a shameless deity, addicted to wine and women. As expected, everyone on the train began to chatter excitedly when they saw the two of them together. Why is he with someone like her? Because here, there are no ears to listen in, right? Men are all the same. She looked at Hybrus and thought, for a high-ranking official to be hand-in-hand with a woman. What a troublesome situation. As a high-ranking official, he always had to worry about how others viewed him, but right now, he couldn't take his eyes off her for a second. She teased, What are you staring at so intently? Hybrus turned away, saying, It's nothing. Just say it directly, he belongs to me, she emphasized, referring to Anakin. Hybrus sighed, a soul that others cannot see. You must feel much more stable now, right? You can see that too? She was surprised. It seems you've accepted life here. No, this is just the preparation period before I completely disappear from this place, she replied nonchalantly. Lady Michian, what do you actually mean? Isn't a woman just a life granted by the gods? You were the one who conveyed that message, she stated. Honestly, whether Lady Michian lives or dies is of no concern to me, Hybrus replied coldly. In the original story, Hybrus is Eris's half-brother. After discovering his existence, Eris quickly sought protection from him. However, when Eris needed help, Hybrus turned his back coldly. To save Helena, he exploited Eris's loneliness. This was clearly a betrayal. She gazed out the window, her voice becoming distant. When I wanted to die, it was still a long way off, so you needn't worry. Everyone has an ending that suits them. That's why I think Eris's death must be a dazzling climax, something readers expect from a villainess. In the end, it's just the tragic decline of a fiend. If this world is a grand play, I wonder what song will play in the final act? At this point, they had stopped at a small riverside village. Hybris asked. Aren't you supposed to be in the capital? What brings you all the way here? A voice rang out from afar. I'm truly fortunate to see you well. It's a pleasure to meet you, Lord Mayuz. I have something to ask you, so I couldn't give prior notice. I hope you don't mind. She added, you can call me Lady Michian, or just a foreigner if you prefer. After all, he has already seen my soul, so there's no need for pretense. Mayuz invited everyone in, saying, it seems we have a long story to discuss. Hybris asked her, that girl was sent by you, right? She replied, you only just realized? I thought you figured it out while we were still on the train. Hybris teased, you seduce others with your chaos, then act as if nothing happened. How could you be so easily deceived? I worry that someone might set a trap to harm you. She replied, the gods will protect you. As she looked at Hybris, she thought, he's red-eyed with concern for Mayuz, the one he sees as a father. Who would have guessed that this trustworthy person is the illegitimate child of the Michian lord? Mayuz turned to her and said, you are a foreigner, I wonder what could bring someone as noble as you to this wretched place? She smiled lightly, am I to disappoint you? No, this is a question only you can answer. She recalled what Jason had told her. What was that person's scheme? What did that dragon sacrifice Jason's life for? What did it say to Mayuz? She reminded herself that she had to find out. She said, Lord Korg mentioned that the dragon said if the law of cause and effect was defied and prophecies were falsified, then fate would also shift. I don't know what that prophecy has to do with the gods. Why do you say I don't know? It was only after that moment passed that I shockingly realized something had changed. Do you remember the exact wording of the prophecy? Mayuz set down his teacup and replied, of course, I remember it vividly. The child born on the night of the 4th, when the moon sets for the 3rd time, must plunge a sword into the maddened dragon. Only that child can harm the radiant dragon. And when the radiant dragon dies, everything will return to its original principle. Mayuz sighed, even now, I still don't know what that principle is. Logically speaking, I am just a small, foolish human. She continued to ask, are there no other prophecies? Mayuz pondered for a moment. No, the gods did not provide any other prophecies. I was the only one to receive that revelation and became a high official because of it. But then I realized that what I heard was not a prophecy, but merely the words of the dragon. I couldn't reveal the truth to everyone, as I could not abandon the honor that had been bestowed upon me. Tears began to fall from Mayuz's face. I am just an old coward, unable to clarify the truth until the end. She thought, is it possible that the dragon lied to Jason? No, Jason truly killed that dragon. But what if it wasn't the radiant dragon, but another dragon? She recalled that the novel only stated, the hero Jason killed the dragon, but there was no specific explanation that it was the radiant dragon. She asked, can a dragon commit suicide? Mayuz was surprised. Why do you ask such a strange thing? Have you ever seen Mother Nature commit suicide? The dragon is a supreme creature, illuminated by the gods. Its existence is no different from nature itself. It only thrives more with the flow of time. A dragon will die when its lifespan runs out, but how can we humans predict that moment? She sighed quietly, her voice tinged with exhaustion. We are all just moths to a flame, living until whenever, no one can predict it. The space around her suddenly darkened after hearing those words. Her body began to tremble, as if everything were closing in on her. That feeling was akin to realizing that even dragons, the most powerful creatures, could not die a natural death, just like her in that moment. She covered her face, burst into tears, and then abruptly stood up, storming out. Outside, she cried for a long time, the feelings of helplessness and resentment welling up inside her. After calming down a bit, Anakin approached her, offering a handkerchief. He gently asked, are you all right? I brought a mirror with me. What do you want to use it for? She nodded quietly and replied, I need to talk to the witch. Let's go into the forest, near a river, there we won't be disturbed. When they reached the river, she looked into the mirror and called out the name of the witch, Maddie. I have something to ask you. Show me your true form. Maddie's voice echoed from the mirror, what is it this time? What do you plan to do that requires me? She straightforwardly asked, did the radiant dragon speak a false prophecy to force Jason to kill it? Maddie chuckled softly, you never cease to surprise me. Indeed, Jason's fate is to slay the dragon, but that's not what he desires. The radiant dragon is not so different from you, a foreigner. Initially, it reveled in its newfound power and existence. However, that seemingly eternal happiness gradually you really have a talent for surprising me again and again. Anyway, the destiny set for Jason is to slay the dragon. Yes, that's because of the light dragon, which is just like you, a foreign soul that possessed it. At first, the dragon was content with its new life, becoming the most powerful creature without any obstacles in its path. Not only did it help humans build a kingdom, but it also lived a life truly worth living. It had a burning love for another dragon, laid eggs, and raised its offspring. But the happiness that seemed eternal gradually faded away as boredom crept in. It endured suffering for a long time, and then, it simply went mad. After becoming the light dragon, it sought out the witch council, who said, "You want us to kill you? Of course, we have the power, but dealing with the aftermath might bring many troubles. Curly, the second oldest among us, made a deal with the light dragon. I cannot strike you directly, but I will show you a way to die. What will you offer me in return?" The light dragon willingly paid the price, and Curly told it, "A warrior destined to slay dragons will soon be born. Light dragon, you must take that destiny." Finally, on the day that warrior slays the dragon, the entire world will be disrupted. On that day, another poor dragon lost what belonged to it, the chance to die with the one it loved. The dragon, deprived of its opportunity to die, fell into despair, pondering how it could restore its fate. And so, it decided to break the laws of causality by offering its heart as a sacrifice to restore its destiny. At that moment, it heard the wishes of two girls. In one sense, it was a miracle, but in another, it was a tragedy. One girl prayed for the dream in her heart to come true, while the other wished for herself to disappear from this world. The dragon made both their wishes come true. The soul of that girl vanished along with the dragon's heart at that very moment. The laws of causality in this world found a new soul, which then entered the empty body of that girl, and that soul was you. After hearing Maddie's story, Eris went mad. Why me? Answer me. Why does it have to be me? Aren't there plenty of people with dreams like theirs? Why must it be me? Why? Why? Her hands began to tremble, and then she threw the mirror across the room. She felt her hands begin to tremble, anger swelling inside her. Why me? She shouted, and in her rage, she hurled the mirror into the water. At that moment, Anakin shoved Hybris, who had been eavesdropping, in front of her. This person overheard you. What should we do? Should we eliminate him to cover our tracks? Hybris stepped forward, accusing, you dare collude with a witch? Do you know that's a serious crime? She laughed, responding nonchalantly, it is indeed a serious crime. But I'm a foreigner, I'm not subject to the laws of this land. Hybris seethed, you're a criminal, a grotesque aberration in the guise of Miss Michian. Do you really think you can escape justice? She stared defiantly at Hybris, her voice dripping with challenge, are you planning to report me to the Holy See? Fine, that's exactly what I want. This body won't die by blade, but who knows, perhaps by fire. Anakin drew his sword, pressing it to Hybris's throat. Do you want me to deal with him right here? She smirked slightly, let him go. Only when he's free can he accuse me. Then she stepped closer, raising the sword before Hybris and declared, but on second thought, you don't need to report me, because our esteemed official here has the authority to judge me right on the spot. Go ahead, kill me. End my life with that sword. I am the one who colluded with the witch, so I am a witch myself, right? In the original story, he abused his power to bully Eris, knowing full well she was not a witch. He even knew she was his own sister, yet he did not hesitate to insult her, calling her tainted blood. And now, you genuinely pity me? Because I have not yet become that wicked woman, have not harmed the one you love, right? Your thinking is still quite shallow, dear Lord. If you don't intend to kill me now, then please pretend you know nothing about me, about my being a foreigner, or about my collusion with the witch. After all, I'm going to die soon, but I promise I won't die in front of you. Why do you say that? The things I've told you come not from pity. I've suffered deeply because of your sorrow. What can I do to make it better? I know you're enraged. I only wish to ask for your forgiveness. So, please, don't seek death any longer. Don't pity me. That only makes me uncomfortable. No sooner had she finished speaking than Anakin struck Hybris from behind, rendering him unconscious. Put him in front of that hut and go, she instructed. We'll just stop by Randor for a bit before heading back to the capital. Have you finished everything here? I've heard what I needed to hear. We must leave before any suspicions arise. I'll prepare the carriage. Wait for me here. I'll return as quickly as I can. Now left alone, she reflected on everything that had happened. She knew she had to remember all the details in the novel to deal with what was to come. She thought to herself, I hate doing everything. From now on, I'll replace Eris, living like a puppet, destined to die on the day fate has set. But even if it's a tiny flicker of hope, if I try hard enough, perhaps I can change something. As she dozed off for a moment, she opened her eyes to see Anakin standing in front of her. You're really quick. He replied, I worry about you. You worry about me? Are you afraid I'll run away? Afraid I'll die? Anakin looked her then knelt down and said, I'm curious about you. My master said you've lived a certain kind of life. What kind of life do you wish to lead? I'm genuinely curious about that. I'm scared too. I'm afraid I don't know anything about this boy. You love Eris. If only I could read about you like the other male protagonists. At that moment, she looked at him and said, Come here, pick me up. I don't want to walk. He lifted her into his arms, her head resting against his chest, listening to the rhythm of his heartbeat. She thought to herself, this heartbeat doesn't express love yet. His kindness doesn't stem from love. As they sat in the carriage, she began to share stories about her world with him. The world I once lived in is much more developed than this empire. People have freedom of religion, and while there's no magic technology, there is a technique called science. There are no class divisions, no kings or nobles. Every 5 years, the people directly elect their leaders. He asked, if there are no classes, how do people distinguish between rich and poor? She told, just like here, it's based on wealth. The rich hold power. Unlike Eris, I'm just an ordinary person. He asked more, do you have a family? Yeah, there are 4 of us, my parents and my younger brother. My family is quite peculiar, so I don't like them. But now that I think about it, we used to live quite harmoniously. He said, why do you hate them? Because I think my parents favored my brother. No, actually, I felt discriminated against. I blamed myself, thinking I was a bad child who didn't deserve love. So, I matured faster than others. She continued, in that world, no child experiences discrimination. Even though I hate my parents, I still want to see them again. I miss them. I just want to find what I lost. When I meet them again, I want to ask why they treated me like that. After a long journey, they found a place to rest. Are you 2 newlyweds? I'll give you the best room, the innkeeper exclaimed. We're not married. Let her have the best room. I'm fine with any room, he said, gesturing toward her. Entering the inn, she thought to herself, sitting in that carriage all night, I'm exhausted, like I could die and come back to life. Yet, Anakin looks perfectly fine. At that moment, a young girl entered the room to prepare her bath. She asked the girl about local sightseeing spots. The girl said, Randor is famous for its lakes. The lakes here are deeper and even more beautiful than the sea. If you'd like, our guest house also rents out boats. Oh, and lately, there's even a night market. The scenery is absolutely stunning, you should check it out, sister. Hearing all this, the only thing on her mind was the night market. Meanwhile, elsewhere, precisely at High Priest Maeuse's house, Hybris had just woken up when he heard the priest say, I saw you lying at the door, so I brought you in. Did something happen? He remembered the words she had spoken in the forest, High Priest, are you planning to report me to the Holy See? Fine. That's exactly what I want. He pondered to himself, why is it that all the women I want to bind to me always leave? Before he was born, his mother was a young and promising dancer. She changed the god she served and gave birth to him, but her life turned into suffering. In the process, she lost everything she had, and she took out her frustration on him. I told you not to ask about your father anymore. If I hadn't given birth to you, my life wouldn't have been ruined. Because of you, every day I just want to die and end it all. Why did my life fall apart like this? It's all your fault. I should never have brought you into this world. You were my biggest mistake. Sometimes, on nights when I had nightmares, I would gently stroke my mother's cheek while she was still in a deep sleep, checking to make sure she was still warm. I felt so uneasy, afraid that she would really leave me. I wanted to help ease her burden, so I decided to follow the high priest and become a priest myself. I had resolved to leave after becoming a priest, but the night I left, my mother closed her eyes for good. If I had stayed with my mother that day, would things have been different? From a distance, Hybris saw the girl for the first time. He wondered, is she okay? If I say that she reminds me of my mother, would she believe me? Her soul was torn apart, much like that of my mother, whose soul always bore bruises and scars. If I were to become reckless like her, would she believe what I say? That night, my mother appeared in my dreams. She cried and blamed me. On the day I blessed and baptized her, her soul was still torn apart like that, her green eyes carrying the essence of summer, beautiful enough to take one's breath away. Perhaps that beauty made me hesitate. Miss Michian, I always ask myself if I want to help her. I'm just preparing for my complete disappearance. Every time she said that, I remembered my late mother. Both of them wanted to seek death. I began to fear that I wouldn't be able to save her like I couldn't save my mother. I prayed to the gods, asking them to let me hold the hand of this girl this time. This prayer of mine is for Eris. Meanwhile, Eris was strolling through the night market with Anakin. There are more people than I thought. Are you hungry? No, my lady. She looked at him, realizing he was overly cautious. Anakin, I know the more chaotic it is, the more careful we should be. But we came here to rest today, you can relax a little. She took his hand and pulled him along. I'm hungry, let's eat something first. The two arrived at a skewered food stall. The vendor asked, are you two a couple? You look a bit unusual. Are you new here? Anakin replied, no. But she cheerfully responded, yes, we're enjoying our vacation. Anakin was taken aback by her naturalness. She added, he's not as cold as he seems, he's just a bit shy around strangers. The vendor laughed. Oh my, I've met many couples, but I've never seen a bride as beautiful as this girl. You must have saved the world in a past life. You two look great together. I'll give you a discount if you buy 2 skewers. Of course, she bought 2 skewers and enjoyed them heartily. She thought, so delicious. If only I had another glass of beer, it would be perfect. Anakin said, I've never seen a master enjoy their food so much, or share such joyful moments. Just then, a vendor selling wine passed by. She asked, do you know how to make this party even better? Wine. Right after, Anakin brought the wine over. My lady, here's the wine. She invited him to drink with her. The two of them sipped the wine while weaving through the crowd to watch a play. She wondered, what are they going to perform? Anakin replied, that's right, this is a theater performance. After watching, she asked Anakin, what if your life were a grand play? A play that's already been scripted, where you just need to perform your role. You might not be the main character, you could just be a supporting character, or even an extra. Anakin replied, I have to accept it. She asked, why? Why don't you feel angry? I'm not sure, but right now I'm just trying to live well. I think that's enough. She countered. Even if you're not the main character, as a supporting role, you'll lose out on the recognition and affection you deserve. A knight like you doesn't get noticed by anyone. He said, if I wanted to be noticed, I would have chosen a different path. Eris looked at him, you don't have any will or goals? Is there anything that makes you feel unmotivated? Is that how you see me? I just think I need to go with the flow of life. Everyone has to put in the effort, so there's nothing to pay attention to. She apologized. You're right, everyone is trying to live. I forgot that I shouldn't casually judge others' efforts. The effort to return to where I belong might sound strange in the eyes of others, right? Just as shadows become clearer when you get closer to the light. Those efforts only become most apparent when you approach death. He continued. I don't need others to know how hard I've worked, I just need my master to know. Isn't that right? Anakin's words left her momentarily speechless. Suddenly, her mind felt blank. She wanted to say something, but feared that if she did, she wouldn't be able to take it back. The next day, she held a newspaper that reported the disappearance of Lady Michian while traveling by train. Clearly, there was tension between the royal family and the Marquis. She smiled and told Anakin, "We'll stay in this neighborhood a bit longer." She instructed him to ask the maid at the inn to prepare a boat for a tour of the lake and to pack some food for the trip. Once everything was ready, the girl gave her a flower and pinned it in her hair. She thanked her and rewarded the girl with a gold coin, saying, "Don't let the adults take it from you." Anakin secretly watched her, thinking she looked graceful and beautiful adorned with the flower. As they floated on the lake, she decided to speak up. "Anakin, you are a character from a book I once read. This world is a world and a story. You are a supporting character alongside Eris, and you loved that girl." She looked down at the water's surface, which reflected her image, a stunning girl who surprised even herself. She continued. "I'm sorry, Anakin. I've taken the girl you love." Anakin stopped rowing and asked. "What are you talking about? I don't understand. Are you saying I'm a fake?" She nodded. "Maybe so. You're just a character in this play. But are you sure you love that girl? That's how it's written in the book. I read to the end of the story. If you don't follow what is written, then the laws of cause and effect will correct themselves. Even if you were to use your sword to cut my throat right now, I wouldn't die, because the part where I die hasn't come yet." Anakin asked. "Does that mean one day I will love you?" She was surprised and suddenly realized she had never thought about that. She was not Eris. He continued. "Will you love me too?" She turned her face away and replied. "No. I won't love you, so don't love me either." Even though she said that, deep down, she feared she would end up loving him. She felt her answer was selfish, but she had resolved to leave this world. Anakin shook his head and said. "That's really irresponsible." To change the subject, she looked over at the cliff and said. "Anakin, climb over there." "You mean climb the cliff? That's dangerous." "It's not dangerous at all. I told you, the laws of cause and effect will protect us." She remembered a movie she had watched where there were only two ways to escape a dream, death or jumping into the water. Standing on the rock and looking down, she thought, death or jumping into the water, it's more frightening than I imagined. Then suddenly, a loud splash echoed as water sprayed everywhere. She closed her eyes, feeling her body sink deep beneath the surface. "That's right, just like this. Before I develop any deeper feelings, I have to leave here immediately." Immediately, a strong arm pulled her up onto the shore. She was still in shock, questioning whether she was even awake. "Why is Jason here?" She said, "Let go of me." Looking around, she asked, "Where's Anakin?" Then Anakin quickly draped a cloak over her shoulders. But Jason, with a cold demeanor, spoke up. That knight couldn't protect his lady, yet he dares to speak? The tension between the two men filled the air with a heavy scent of gunpowder. She thought to herself, what on earth is this atmosphere? After returning to the guest house, she told herself, I must go back to the capital, even though it feels pointless right now. Who would have thought Jason would come all the way here to bring me back? Jason looked at her and asked. Where do you think you're going, miss? Planning to run away again? The capital is in an uproar because of you. They're using your image to promote the train, yet you've gone missing. She had only just completed her coming-of-age ceremony and hadn't even been granted a title yet, but she was almost treated like royalty. She never thought Jason would search for Eris with such fervor. She suggested, I want to stop by the souvenir shop before we head back. I'll go with you, since your knight is busy packing. The two of them arrived at the souvenir shop. The vendor looked at Jason and laughed, saying, Is the man accompanying you your husband? Immediately, she became angry. No. We don't have that kind of relationship. I'm here to buy gifts for my servants. As the vendor brought out the gifts, she thought, how did he know I was here? And what about the turmoil at the Marquis house? She replied sarcastically, You're later than I expected. I didn't think you'd come looking for me in person. Jason responded, I voluntarily came to find you, not because I haven't been home to visit my family in a while. She interrupted, I see your family is still throwing continuous parties. He answered, his tone indifferent, I'm not interested in long-winded conversations with the elderly. She replied, unfazed, I'm not fond of chatting with you either. With a scowl on her face, she suddenly stepped on Jason's foot with her heel. He burst out laughing, you're quite ruthless. She shot back without hesitation, if you're using your tongue to provoke me, I'll retaliate. Jason looked at her intently, I care about you. Come on, stop pretending. She turned away, I'm not worthy of anyone's concern. So now you're blaming me? Yes, so please tell me, what must I do for you to care about me? Why are you asking me? I've never cared about myself either. After a while of choosing, she picked out a few stones as gifts for the servants. Seeing Jason's intention to make gifts himself, she said. No, don't bother making anything. Just buy the gifts. If what you create looks crude, it would be like insulting the recipient, she said. Jason replied, I want that person to carry something that has my mark. She looked at him, frowning and thinking, this guy is really twisted. Then she spotted a stone with an unusual color. When she picked it up, the vendor introduced it, this stone doesn't sell well at all. She remarked, it has a gloomy color, with many scratches, and doesn't shine brightly, so no one wants to buy it, right? Turning away, she thought, it seems like it resembles me. Then she requested, please make me a necklace with this stone. After returning, she told Anakin to kneel down and then took out the necklace she had just made at the shop, putting it around his neck. She asked, do you find it uncomfortable? Anakin answered honestly, no, not at all. I'm very happy. She secretly smiled, thinking, I intentionally made it uncomfortable so that whenever you feel uneasy, you'll think of me. Thoughts flickered through her mind, and then she turned away and said, let's go. In the carriage, Jason asked a loaded question, do you both know the fate of running away for love? If the Marquis and the royal family find out about this, they will think that the knight has seduced you. Anakin would be executed, and you would be imprisoned for life in the royal palace, he said. She replied, I think running away for love suits you more. You've seen me jump off a cliff before. I came to this land to die. Be honest with yourself, milady. When in love, everyone becomes a fool, don't they? He asked. She gave him another question, if you don't believe me, then fine. But why do you need to know the reason I want to die? Jason asked, have you lost something? She coldly replied. I want to die because I have no regrets left in this world. Even if this body dies right now, I won't regret it at all. She knew that no matter how she explained, he would never understand, especially someone like Jason, who had a strong belief in life, the one who escaped the fate of a dragon slayer. She gave a faint smile. Lord Quirg, I have no purpose in life. I'm not like you, living to see Helena's happy face. So stop spouting nonsense and stop caring about me. Jason smiled and asked. Why do you think I care about you? Only when you've stepped into my heart will I admit to the things you've just said. She interrupted. Stop it. As you said, I've passed the coming-of-age ceremony and will soon become part of the royal family. So, it's best if you stop toying with me. At that moment, their carriage was blocked by a group of bandits. One of them shouted. Hand over Lady Michian to us immediately. Jason calmly stepped down from the carriage and said to the bandits. Get lost. I'll spare your lives. The bandits burst into laughter. Ridiculous. If you drop your sword, we'll let you join us. Are you truly unwilling to turn back? Jason asked, then turned to her. Milady, please ride away with your knight. She asked anxiously. What about you? Jason gave a faint smile. If it's just this group of bandits, I'll deal with them and meet you soon. But earlier, you misunderstood my words. Don't be too upset over others' criticisms. I believe when you return to the capital, you will find sweet and happy moments awaiting you. After saying that, he turned his back to face the bandits. Anakin extended his hand and said to her. Master, please take my hand. If you relax and lean back against my chest, you won't feel uncomfortable. She sighed. All right, fine. After a long journey, night had fallen. She asked. How much longer until we reach the capital? Anakin replied. Another 2 days, milady. She groaned. Oh dear, By the time we get to the capital, I'll have no bottom left. Let's stop at the next village to buy a seat cushion. Anakin smiled. That won't be possible, so let me tell you a story instead. She looked a little surprised. A story? What kind of story are you planning to tell? Anakin calmly said. My story isn't interesting. I've lived a very peaceful life. If I have to talk about myself, I would prefer to speak about my present. I don't want to focus on the past. She thought to herself, one day, I might become part of the past. At that time, he will move on as if nothing happened. Perhaps I'm not important to him, he is only loyal because I am his master. So, please don't make me look back at the past, and don't ask me what I'll do in the future. I'm not smart and don't have many skills, so all I can do is focus on the present. And what are you doing right now? She asked. Anakin replied. Right now, I'm escorting my master home. She thought to herself, I like this person. No matter how selfish I am, he never blames me. He is the only one who is always by my side. She looked at Anakin with gentle eyes. Dear Anakin, when I return to the old world, I'll probably miss you a lot. So, you must remember me too. After many tiring days on horseback, she finally returned to the mansion. The servants were all very worried about her. At that moment, her father's voice echoed from above. Heiress, come to my office. No one else is allowed in until I give permission. She entered the office. You called for me? Her father looked at her sternly. Why did you do this? Do you think you can escape my watch? She responded firmly. I don't understand what you're talking about. Her father sighed. Do you not understand why I advised you to find your own knight? It was so you could avoid the attention of others, to face the filth and evil of this world. She looked at him and sighed. You speak in such strange ways. You chose Anakin for me, not I. He looked at her, his eyes full of disappointment and pain. She knew he had noticed the changes in her. She decided to reveal the truth. That's right. Besides, I'm not even your real daughter, am I? If that's the case, I don't want to pretend anymore. The Marquis shouted angrily. How dare you? She chuckled and responded. Let me tell you something, if you don't want me to die, then don't threaten me or say things like you did earlier. In fact, I really do want to die. He looked at her, his voice bitter. It seems my daughter has become quite rude and wicked. She giggled after hearing his words. Why are you laughing? He asked. Because it's funny. Your daughter. After all, you've never truly loved your own daughter. If you had really cared for Eris, you wouldn't have raised her the way you did. The Marquis had always accepted what Eris wanted, but what Eris truly wanted was to be useful to her father. She continued. If you loved your daughter, you would have cancelled this arranged marriage. But instead, you pretended not to know, just so you could maintain your power. Someone as clever as you, who can notice changes in your own daughter, surely would have noticed her anger toward the crown prince, wouldn't you? He scoffed with disdain. Enough. I love my daughter very much. I just wanted her to have the best position. She responded without hesitation. The best position doesn't always bring happiness. Look at the things you consider best. Look at the people in the royal palace, do they seem happy? That was what she wanted to say to the man at the center of all this trouble. The Marquis asked. Then what do you plan to do? You will help me. If not, there are others who could help me better than you. She thought to herself, if he knew about my plan to die, he would never help me. He's probably growing impatient now. He doesn't even know who I am. I'm not Eris, threats or deals won't work on me. Right now, I'm a card that could be used to threaten the Marquis. Throwing this away would be a waste. At that moment, a messenger from the royal palace arrived, informing her that the Queen had summoned her. She said, I dare not keep the Queen waiting, so I'll go now, father. I'll return later. At the palace, the Queen remarked. I didn't expect you to stay in that room. You're not a child anymore, so why act jealous when you're not the center of attention? I am but a foolish girl, your majesty, so I don't understand what you mean. Could you clarify? The Queen smirked. It seems you've grown wiser with age. You know that I was the one who gave that girl the clothes, don't you? She was surprised, not expecting the queen to admit it so openly. She said, "How could Lady Anto blame her have taken them without the crown prince's help? I only thought that much. It seems I was right." The queen nodded. "You are indeed clever, more perceptive than the crown prince himself. You guessed correctly. I helped the girl take those clothes. I threw away Lord Korg's garments and replaced them with yours." She couldn't help but feel shocked and pained by the queen's cruelty. "You really deceived her?" she asked. The queen sneered. "I despise you, Lady Michian. You are too strong and heartless to become the crown princess. If the marquis were to marry into the royal family, things would become far more complicated." She tried to remain calm. "So, you chose Lady Anto Blamer, a commoner, who has lived as a servant for so long, someone who knows nothing about being a queen or a crown princess." The queen replied. "She is kind-hearted and gentle, so she will be loyal to the royal family. The crown prince's heart has already been stolen by her beauty, so there's no need to worry about the future heirs. As for becoming a queen, I can teach her. Eris, I want to kill you. I want you to die in agony. Even though you weren't the one who killed my son, it was all caused by the marquis. The marquis killed my innocent son. You think the same, don't you? I want to make you suffer, drag you into the palace, starve you until you wither away and die slowly. Yet, the two men who killed my son are now trying to raise you to the position of crown princess." She said. "I do not wish to marry the crown prince." The queen looked at her skeptically. "Haven't you been in love with him for a long time?" She shook her head and replied gently. "Isn't love the most changeable thing in the world? You know this well. I once thought love was everything, but now it's no longer that way. If you permit it, I would like to cancel this marriage." The queen sighed and looked at her. "Does your father know?" She calmly answered. "Whether my father knows or not is not important. What matters is whether you understand my feelings. I will teach the girl for you. Besides, if you directly take on the task of teaching her, it might spread rumors and attract unwanted attention." At this moment, she hoped the queen would agree to her proposal. That way, she would have the chance to be alone with Helena. After all, if she wanted to reach the conclusion of this story, she had to kill Helena in one swift action. Only then could she face the death sentence, as it was in the original novel. Eris had never taught Helena, and she feared she would be rejected due to the law of karma. The queen said, "It's true that you and my son are not a destined pair. Alex needs a girl who is obedient and listens well." Her words seemed to implicitly agree with Eris's proposal. I stood up, performed the bow, and left. Finally, I could take the next step. After all, I had sought the queen's assistance, so the sooner I acted, the better. Since I was already at the palace, I should probably meet Helena to decide on the teaching schedule moving forward. On my way, I noticed a mirror, and Maddie was already waiting there for me. I walked closer, and Maddie said, "You've returned safely, haven't you?" Eris replied, "It seems like you people can pull strings from the shadows, right?" Maddie smiled. "Pull strings? That's called giving signals." Eris was quite hurry. "If there's something to say, just say it. I can't have long conversations in the palace." Maddie said, "I went looking for a solution. Please come to my shop." Soon after, I went to find Maddie. She handed me a dagger. Holding the dagger in my hand, I said, "It seems using this dagger to open an envelope won't work. It's a dagger that changes its shape according to the will of the wielder. You should stab someone with this dagger." "Stab who?" "Who else? The person that the owner of this body was originally meant to kill." "Are you telling me to stab Helena with this?" "Yes. You should bathe her in blood. This doesn't even have a blade, it's completely just a crude weapon. I already told you, it will change according to your will. You really have to want to kill that girl." "Do I have to kill her? Why do I sound so weak all of a sudden?" Maddie answered, "I remember you said you would do anything to return to your world. Have you been discouraged by knowing her for so long? Do you actually care for her? How ridiculous." Questions I had never pondered before suddenly flooded my mind. Is it right to kill an innocent person like her to save myself? From the perspective of the victim, would she feel anger or injustice? Helena would surely want to live. Even if her current life is a bit harsh, she firmly believes that happiness will come eventually. She fully deserves to enjoy those benefits. But I value my life more. At this moment, Maddie handed her a small vial and said, "Now, you need one more offering, tears. Use this vial to collect your tears." "What tears? Didn't I tell you?" "You're smart, try to figure it out yourself." After returning home, I handed Anakin a pouch of money and said, "Take this back to your brother. On your way, stay at home a bit and then come back." He asked, "How can I accept such a large sum?" I comforted him, "Don't worry about it. If it's not your money, I'll have to stay holed up in my house for a while, so just stop talking nonsense and go already." At that moment, he reached out to touch her hand and said, "Will you come with me?" "Why?" "I hope my master will go with me." "Why?" "Because I don't want to leave my master alone." He blushed, and Eris thought, a person who usually isn't good at making demands is making one now. "All right, if we're going, let's go." "Really? I'll go arrange things before you change your mind." After that, he took her to his home. She met a little girl. "Hey, who are you?" "Stop joking, we have a guest." "How could you bring someone home? You've never brought a girl home before." The boy was startled when she opened the door and saw her standing there. "Miss, why are you here?" "Oh, it's not that I don't like it. But I haven't cleaned the house yet. I just came to take your brother home, but he pulled me back with him." She had worried about how a child could live alone, but the girl was more interactive than she had thought. What luck, she thought to herself. At first, she had planned to bury her face in a pillow and feel the pain the moment she fired Anakin. She was certain that it would be time to cry for her fate before becoming a cold-blooded killer. After all, it was hard to find an opportunity to cry, yet at this moment, the boy came up to her and said, "Can I bring you some tea?" "Let your brother make the tea, I have something to discuss with you." "Come sit over here." "Talk to me?" "What's your name?" "My name is Phoebe." "Did you name yourself?" "Yes." "Kikia is Kikia, it's such a beautiful name, isn't it?" Looking at the boy, she thought about how she hated the name given to her by her father, who had died from drinking and gambling, so she had given herself a new name. So cool, she thought to herself. "Today, I came to give you the payment I promised last time, including the reward for distracting Hybris. Of course, it also includes the hush money." "Is this the entire amount?" "If the hush money is the price for a life, then this isn't a large sum at all." "Thank you, miss, thank you. Use it to buy candies to share with the kids in the neighborhood. Getting to know those children and making them act according to your wishes isn't easy at all." "Oh, right, when I was buying gifts for the servants at the tourist site, I happened to pick something out for you. Do you like it?" "Of course, I do. This is the first time in my life I've seen such a beautiful gem." "Thank you so much. Now that I have this, you can sell the earrings you gave me last time to support yourself." "Actually, Kikia, there's something else I want to entrust to you." "Whatever it is, just tell me." "You need to find someone who is well versed in court etiquette for me. However, that person must not be related to the royal family at present. If possible, it would be even better to find someone who hates the royal family." She thought, to teach Helena, I must first become a complete person, because I actually don't know court etiquette myself. I just need one opportunity to stab Helena during class. She asked, "How long will it take for you to find that person?" "About a week should be enough. I will contact you through my brother." At this moment, the boy handed Anakin 2 gold coins and said, "Use this money to buy sweets and bread, so I can share it with the kids as the miss requested." He turned to her and asked, "Is it all right if I do that?" "I allow it, so you can go and come back." "All right then, I'll be right back." She thought, how can a skilled brother be like this? He must often be ordered around by his younger brother. As soon as he left, the boy said, "Your brother seems to be smiling a lot these days, doesn't he?" "Well, not too often." "Why do you ask?" "Because he looks happy. Sometimes, I also feel scared of him. He seems like a puppet controlled by a witch. He only breathes but doesn't feel like a living person." "By the way, has your brother been given a name yet?" "I've named him already." I call him Anakin. That's a really nice name. I also have a talent for naming. Why didn't I name my brother? He said he doesn't need it. After all, no one calls him by name. Even if he has a name, it would be meaningless. Did he say that to you? My brother doesn't want to create a meaning for his life, because living in the underground world only brings pain. Thank you for giving him a meaningful life. Meaningful? It's all the same. Let's skip that. How about you come to my house to be a servant? No, Mississippi. I understand that you care about me, but this is my home. In this area, as long as you have money, you can live well. Moreover, if there's a mouse, he will help you tear apart the rumors behind your back. Letting him out into the world would be much better. I think that if he can study and grow up in a good environment, he might become a remarkable child. He's truly a precious boy in many ways. Who knows, he might even become the ruler of this area one day. Before leaving this place, she thought, maybe I should introduce the boy to Maddie. She would definitely be pleased. On the way back, she asked Anakin, why didn't you refuse? What are you talking about? I mean when I named you. Your brother said you refused when he was about to name you. Why did the miss name me? If someone is going to name me, I hope that person will call me by my name the most. This is probably the rare occasion I've said this. You know that, right? In fact, the miss doesn't need to give me a name. I've only recently understood that. You just need to use me as a convenient tool. I just wanted to tell you that. The miss intentionally gave me a name, so I sensed that you would call me by it many times in the future. Wherever you go, whatever you do, you will always call my name. She replied, suppose I go back, what will you do with that name? I plan to become a wandering knight, as you advised before. A name given by my master being spread everywhere isn't so bad. At this moment, a flurry of thoughts and questions filled her mind. Even if she left, he could easily express his dependence on her. A straightforward young man. Did Eris give him a name? What name did she originally give him in the original story? What happens next after Eris dies? How will he be in that segment? In the original story, only Anakin's future is unclear, so she couldn't predict it at all. Could he survive, even if she died? Could she save him?